For over 35 years, my grandfather tutored for free all of the B'nai Mitzvah students at his small Reform synagogue in Huntsville, Alabama. And alongside this, he wrote over 1,500 stories during his retirement. I don't even know what he did for a living. I remember him as a B'nai Mitzvah tutor and story writer. For my grandfather, tutoring B'nai Mitzvah students was a big part of his life's work. But he still found the decision to do so difficult, and he writes about this in one of his stories. He says, "I recently marked the 25th anniversary of my initiation into the Bar Mitzvah Teachers Union. Back then, it was a cold and stormy day, and the cloud bank to the west looked just like the Red Sea parted by the breath of God. All nature seemed to rebel against my decision. Signs and wonders were everywhere. Gusts of wind attempted to blow my cheap, stripped-down model Kia, all bar mitzvah teachers are poor, off the road." What follows in this short story is a list of humorous pledges he makes with other members of his so-called union, including my favorite: "I promise never to engage in litigation against child or parent just because they present me a weekly snack of discounted off-brand store cookies." The story concludes with him coming to terms with B'nai Mitzvah tutoring being a challenge due to working with difficult children and parents. But it's a challenge that he's willing to take on, and he decides to continue tutoring. As we marked his 5th yahrzeit recently, I'm thinking about what it means to devote ourselves to our lives' work, even if gusts of wind seemed ready to blow us astray from our paths, from our most crucial decisions. This week's portion opens with the book of Vayikra, the section of the Torah about priests and sacrifices in the temple service. Rabbi Jonathan Sachs writes about how this new stage will have an inevitable effect on Moses as a leader. He says, until now, Moses had led the Jewish people. Aaron had assisted him, but now, however, Aaron would do what Moses himself could not. Aaron was about to become the one kind of leader Moses was never destined to be, a high priest. Sachs continues by pointing out a particular moment in next week's portion, Tzav, where this struggle around Moses's role is embodied. There is a special cantillation symbol that I'm sure those who chanted Torah today are very pleased does not occur in this week's portion because it's quite hard to chant. It actually occurs only 4 times in the Torah, and it's called a shalshelet. It's a quivering note that looks kind of like this, and it goes back and forth and back and forth. And according to Sachs, this shalshelet symbolizes a kind of internal struggle. After robing Aaron and anointing him, now Moses needs to sacrifice a ram as part of dedicating the tabernacle. The shalshelet appears over this word vayishchat, which means and he slaughtered. So according to Sachs, he does not just sacrifice the lamb, he does it with much struggle and trepidation. It's almost as if his hand is quivering as he holds the knife. He's struggling with the limits of his leadership. Can he sacrifice this animal? In this moment, suddenly the balance of power will shift. Roles will be reversed. Aaron will now take a lead. Can Moses usher in this moment, knowing that in slaughtering this animal, he is surrendering and acknowledging his own limits as a leader? This will be the last animal that he ever sacrifices. Without this symbol, we would not have witnessed Moses' struggle about the limits of his leadership. We would have just read the text and thought he simply slaughtered the animal. Through the use of trope or the cantillation symbols that we have heard laned or chanted so beautifully today, the Torah takes on new meaning. And this is made explicit in the Tikkun Zohar, a 16th century Kabbalistic text. The shalshelet is described not just as a cantillation symbol, but as an object. It is described as a chain around the necks of the forces of evil, or as tefillin, the phylacteries that bind us to God, or bind parts of God to God's self. So this note, the shalshelet, this note of internal struggle, has the power to contain or imprison like a chain, but it also has the power to connect like the phylacteries. According to Jonathan Sachs, for Moshe, the shalshelet is confining. It is what enables him to take a step back from certain forms of leadership in order to know his true role. As he writes, good leaders know their limits. The Shalshelet enables Moses to step back from who he cannot be in order to become who he is destined to be. But the Mehashiloach, a 19th century Hasidic master, has a different reading of Moses's leadership struggle, connecting the struggle of Moses to a verse from Isaiah. V'haya terem yikra'u v'ani e'ena. It will be, before they will even call, I will answer. They have not yet spoken, and I, God, will hear. In the case of Moses, the Mehashiloach teaches that he goes to his very limits. And there he finds only God waiting. Before Moses even calls out, he receives a divine answer. He gets this answer only by going to the very limits of his own desire, his own leadership, and his own destiny. And all he has to do is push to these limits, and then God responds. The Mehashiloach teaches that through this work, Moses merits that Torah HaKarbanot yalchu al yado. The Torah of the sacrifices will be transmitted through him. He may not perform the temple service, but he can transmit its laws. He joins forces with his brother Aaron to transmit the laws of sacrifice, even if he himself cannot be part of the temple service. And this is a radical and different reading to that of Rabbi Sachs. Unlike Sachs, who sees this moment as one of limitation, the Mehashiloach sees the struggle of Moses as a force of connectivity, connecting who Moses was and who he will be, offering him to not just transmit Torah, but to take his transmission a step further. He will transmit the laws of sacrifice. He will be the voice that guides Aaron. He will not just teach Torah, but he will show the Jewish people how to embody it through ritual service. And I think this is exactly what laning or chanting Torah is. It is moving from reading text as words to really teaching those words, to embodying them, to singing them, to becoming them. From the person who just said some words to the person that can guide others to action. From Moses, who transmitted Torah, to Moses, who can tell others how to be in the world. And laning is just one powerful way we can move from learning to doing. Here at Westminster Synagogue, I'm very proud of all the laning that we are doing. Danny led an amazing reading of Megillat Esther for Purim, and we had a bunch of new people. Jesse, Leah, and Danny all read Megillat Esther, all chant it for the first time. And today we're celebrating the graduation of the laning course. The teacher, Chani Smith, is joining us online, and our students have worked tirelessly to prepare for today. And they really have brought the parsha, the portion, to life with us. So mazel tov yet again to Mai, Ilsa, Zoe, Rafaela, Naomi, David, and Roger. To those of you who laned beautifully today, to those who blessed the scroll, and to those who will lane in the future. It's really not easy. So yasher koach to everyone who took on this challenge. And not just with laning, but in all aspects of our lives, we can use these moments of internal struggle for connectivity. Not to put limits on ourselves, but to take who we have been and bridge that with who we are destined to become. The possibilities laid out in the Mehashiloach for taking ourselves to our very limits are compelling. The Shalshelet saying not just stop here, but instead, where I have been has simply been my training for what I will do next. From being that person in the past, I have learned about who I need to become, and now I can take that learning into doing. In the words of the poet Rilke, you sent out beyond your recall, go to the limits of your longing, embody me, flare up like a flame, and make big shadows I can move in. Let everything happen to you, beauty and terror. Just keep going. No feeling is final. Don't let yourself lose me. Nearby is the country they call life. You will know it by its seriousness. Give me your hand. In this poem, he speaks to the power of each of our destinies. When we go to the limits of our longing, we truly embody our full potential. It's scary, and we may quiver or shake like the Shalshelet. But there we find our next steps, our development into new phases of leaderships, and our lives. When I especially miss my grandfather, I go on the National Public Radio of Huntsville, Alabama's website and listen to recordings of him reading his stories. There is something different about hearing these stories read in his own words and his thick Southern accent. I feel like he is almost in the room with me. It's kind of like leaning. He's giving voice to the words that are otherwise only in written form. And the stories really come to life. They become real. Yael, I hear him say, embody me. It's a cold and stormy day, and the cloud bank to the west looks just like the Red Sea parted by the breath of God. All nature seems to rebel against my decision. But here, I struggle with who I have been and who I want to become. Here, I go to my limits. And quivering at the edge, back and forth, I stay silent, waiting for an answer. And it arrives. Just keep going. Shabbat Shalom.